Hello everybody, here's a still from this morning, shot taken out my window of this family who was in the rain, and it was a cold rainy morning here in Washington, going through a dumpster, and that I see this everywhere I go all the time. I just feel that it's rude. I felt it was rude to this poor woman, but I feel that it is important to document it. And I have contacted, and I was really polite, and I did write an email to Senator Sam Hunt about this problem, because he does have on his website right here, putting people first. I just hope I'm being clear. Putting people first, Sam Hunt. And yet when I go out, this is what I see. And then when I do look to ask, and I did call Sam Hunt's office. I called and I sent an email and I made a follow-up call to ask if they received the email, and they told me to never call their office again. And I've never called his office before about anything. He's old as the hills. He's been in forever. I sat on him on a bus once to go to a political event like 20 years ago, when I thought, I could help things on earth by doing such silly things. So that's all that I know about him. I remember he was really upset because the electricity went off in the building for like a second. We had a brownout and he went off on it forever. So it's interesting that he was upset about this little 2-second brownout during his speech that he got really mad about. But he's, who is he putting first? Who is he putting first? This woman looks so desperate, so crying like them all. And then whenever I've gone, I saw something, and I'm sorry I didn't bring it up. I'll bring it up on the next one, where they are where there are so many refugee centers and help places here in the area, and they just give people housing right away. And there are so many centers for help. It's just wild. And I've, Center for Empowering and Get Involved. And it's wild how the list goes on. And I'm going to be bringing up more of that. I saw something else that made me kind of stop in my tracks. And I realized I had to sort of add this part in. And then we'll get back to the big refugee and the big contractors and all the money being made. And why don't you see refugees, Muslims, and people like that going through the garbage? You don't. You only see the indigenous people from the area, mainly white European stock, as one would say. They do say race is a social construct, but that's always the first question they ask after your name and birthday on every form around the government. So when you're applying for a job, when you're applying for college, when you're applying for anything. So here's the Housing Authority of Thurston County, and it is brand spanking new, as you can see. They're really proud of it. It's like millions and millions of dollars. It's got great big conference rooms. It's got like this thing that's all windows in the back with trees. It's on a little cul-de-sac that's off to its sort of own. And this was a picture that I got off of their website, and I sent that in saying, well, if you're helping people, how come the Housing Authority isn't helping these people? And they say they have a permanent waiting list that is a shut waiting list. So you cannot even go on a waiting list, they said, for these people to even be found. And yet they have a brand spanking new building in a really fancy part of town. I mean, how much did even that light cost for for the parking lot. How much were these windows? I mean, it's got, fancy doors. The whole thing is, it's really big. It's not like a huge, like super, like a $200 million office building, but it is a big, expensive building with really fancy chairs in it, fancy carpets, all that stuff. And yet they cannot provide housing to people in Olympia. They're eating out of dumpsters. And yet this place has its own little, snack bar, coffee thing, plush carpets, really, really fancy little kind of conference room that they like to hang in. And it's just interesting that, that they, right here, it says housing voucher waiting list closed. Okay, Evergreen Vista is the only place where they, it appears, are putting people, and that's interesting that is even open. That's kind of amazing. That's kind of like a scary place from what I think I've heard, and that nobody seems to want to live there. It's, kind of like the place where you get, stabbed and shot at the same time in Olympia or something, kind of full of mold. I think where people can actually have their own choice. The waiting list itself is closed. So they're saying that people can't even put their name on a list. And if they're basically saying that there's a voucher for Evergreen Vista, then why are they showing these other places that are nothing like this total ghetto place that they send people? And why are they being paid to just say, oh, all we have is a waiting list? I mean, what is there a shell game going on here? I mean, are people getting like this big salary? And, you see the Thurston County housing people, around town. They kind of make themselves known. And they're, big drinkers, kind of big eaters, kind of at the supper clubs. And like none of this stuff is, they're showing people housing, and yet they're saying it's closed, or you can go to the Evergreen Vista Project, and whenever there's the word project, I don't think anyone wants to go there. I think it's something that's really, really scary. I don't know. That's really interesting. And then they have this thing, so they're just, don't seem to really do much or have much for people. Once again, waiting list closed. And that waiting list is basically permanently closed. So that people really cannot find housing with dignity at all. It's kind of just a ruse. Just like, here's Sam Hunt, and he's telling people that he's putting people first. And yet, if he's putting people first, really seriously, why are we having this problem? It's not only just, bad, naughty kids downtown that are rebelling against their parents. This is people who are so completely desperate and so completely in need of help. And I wonder, how people don't see this. I wonder how, why Sam Hunt's office told me this wasn't what they deal with. If this isn't what they deal with, what do they deal with? If he's putting people first, what people is he putting first? And so, sorry about that. I want to get more into all the different various refugee programs that are out there and why you don't see the refugees in the dumpsters, but you see the disabled in the dumpsters, the elderly in the dumpsters, the, people like that. Take good care. Bye.